Boston College has lost 8 players to the transfer portal, but the transfer portal is a two-way street. BC is going to be active themselves trying to grab talent in a critical 2024 year. We're going to be joined by a special guest today to talk about what they could be looking for. We're going to look at women's basketball and a whole much more on today's Locked On BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I am your host, AJ Black. I'm also the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider. Check out my work over there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, you look on social media, you look at what's going on Eagle Insider and other sites, and all the talk and buzz right now is a sense of panic around the amount of transfers that have left Boston College. And to that, I understand partially. I look at it and say, yeah, they've lost a bunch. So has a lot of other teams. Yes, they've lost a bunch, but some of these players aren't really critical to what their future plans are. But the other piece of the pie hasn't started yet. Some of it has. And that is going to be who Boston College brings in the transfer portal. As we saw in the 2023 season, it was critical that they brought in some guys. And we'll talk about what those players are going to need to be and what positions they're going to be looking for on today's show. But today we have a special guest. We're joined by Kate Otis. Kate is a contributor on Eagle Insider. She's been covering women's basketball, but she is a Boston College fan at heart. Kate, how's it going? Kate, you there? Uh-oh. You there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're there.
Okay, sorry. How are you
good.
guys? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're talking transfers here. And BC 6-6. There's a lot, obviously, some areas that they need to improve on. In your opinion, what are some positions you think BC should be looking at in the transfer portal?
Yeah, thanks. As you noted, 6-6, tough go, but there are Eagles, so we're gonna root for them. For the portal, to bring in some new guys, I think we should really find a nice tight end. We saw that one of our great ones was injured, and missed the season, and we really need a nice running back. Our current running back is a senior, and as we know, our quarterback Tommy can be his own running back, but he needs some help.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Some of the things you brought up right there, right? So George Takis, he missed most of the season, and I think that was kind of a theme for the 2 years he was here, right? He got hurt last year. He played banged up. This year he got hurt, got banged up, and they need depth at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, if you're an Eagle Insider's VIP right now, I got 2 names of players that they're looking at in the transfer portal. They got one coming this weekend. So, Kate, you nailed that one. Running back, too. I think that's a really good point, too. I don't know if you've been looking at, like, the tweets that have been going out, but BC has lost
a lot.
They've lost a lot, right?
Compared to other teams in the ACC too, we're looking low.
Yeah, and running back is obviously a very specific position that you need depth at. And so you lost Pat Garwo, you lost Cam Barfield, Andre Hines, and then today Xavier Coleman. Now, for the folks that are worried, 3 of those guys were not really contributors. Andre Hines had that fun, last drive against Syracuse. But he's a practice player. He wasn't really a contributor on a regular basis. And then, Barfield he averaged like 1.2 or 1.3 yards per carry. He wasn't going to, he's 5'6", shorter than me. I'm not a big guy. And in a running game like that, it just isn't working. And then Xavier Coleman never figured out anything in this offense. So I think you're right, Kate. Like, you want more running backs, and I think you want guys that are kind of in the frame of of Kai Robichaux, like big dudes, right? And any thoughts on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean,
I think you cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know why I keep throwing out my mic's on. Like I mentioned on Twitter, it's just like the Patriots, right? We have a good, solid defense, so that's what's getting us by. But at the end of the day, we need an offense to score most of our points, right? So our defense is strong. I think we're in a good spot there. It's more so just we need that we have it all, but we need the offense to then come in and help us succeed. And I also have my dad here too, Chuck Otis, a big BC Eagles lover. So feel free to chime in, Dad.
Chuck, I know you're hanging out there too, and Chuck is a big supporter of Boston College. Chuck,
class of '89.
Class of '89. Your thoughts on the defense? Because I'm curious what you think too. Because I
thought they started the season really well, but they ended the season very poorly. I mean, Elijah Jones shutting it down. We don't really know why. Maybe his agent told him to. Things just started to unravel after they were 6-3. I mean, especially the Miami game. It was embarrassing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, they had their moments, but I even go back to the beginning of the season, right? With Northwestern, they just kind of dragged BC's defense or up and down the field. They're going to need some depth there. They really haven't lost anyone, and you got to hope that the secondary. There was a lot of kids. I mean, I don't want to call them kids, but like younger guys on that roster, right? Like guys like Amari Jackson and CJ Kling-Scales and KP Price as a safety. I would look. I have to think that Halfley's going to have to look at that secondary and say that we're going to get some guys. And Marty Party in our comment section, as I was saying to Kate before we even started, I try not to stay in the comment section because I get myself distracted and that makes a bad show. Marty Party, one of our loyal listeners, says, "What about some linebackers?" I think that's some interesting thoughts. Bryce Steele, we don't know what's going to happen with him yet, right? He had something happen, and they're protecting his medical privacy, but will he play again? We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Now, Kate, I got a question for you again. Do you expect this to be a big recruiting class? I mean, a big transfer? Do you think Halfley's going to go heavy in the transfer portal, or do you think it's going to be a smaller class?
I think if he was smart, he would, especially because he's kind of in the tank, right? I mean, we don't know how much longer he's got with the team. And I like him. I really do. I think he's a great coach, but they need some help all around. So I really hope they go strong this year and get some young guys, like we mentioned. I mean, that's where the talent is right now, right? And let's try to steal some transfers from other big schools in the ACC. Who says we can't do it, right? So I have some good hope, and I hope they can capture some good guys.
Yeah, I think you're totally right? And funny enough that you bring other ACC schools, that tight end I was mentioning, if you go to the site, he's from an ACC school, and I'm not gonna give away the info I get because I'm the Eagle insider. I get a lot of stuff, so it would be an attractive school with a good offense. So I'm just gonna say that, right?
Yeah.
All right. In a moment, we're gonna switch gears here. Kate covers the women's basketball team. She's been watching. We're going to talk a little bit about how the women's basketball team has looked so far. Talk about today's game. They played Kentucky in the ACC SEC Challenge. What happened? Give a little brief overview of that. And I want to get Chuck on here a little bit too, because I want to hear more his thoughts. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. But if you have not listened to some of the other podcasts on the Locked On Network, you are missing out. You should check out Locked On Red Sox. With free agency coming up and trades and all sorts of good stuff, Locked On Red Sox has some of the best coverage you're going to find and two great hosts. Check out Locked On Red Sox on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, it's college football season, it's basketball season, and FanDuel has got you covered in it all. Now, if you are out there ready to get yourself into a bet, FanDuel is the place to go. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. This app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. We're recording this on a Thursday night. I went in before I started recording with Kate, and I was looking at the Seahawks and Dallas game, And I was like, oh, there's a no sweat parlay, which is great. That means even if I lose, which if you listen to my Friday episodes with Mitch, I lose all the time. That's why I'm not a good bettor. I put a parlay down on two touchdowns by two different players on the Cowboys. I'm already tanking on it, but hey, there's still a half of football left. But it was so easy. I just went click, submitted my bet. And the best part is it's no sweat. That means I get my money back in on-app credits if I don't win. So go yourself over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official sports partner of the NFL. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black, and as I said earlier, I am joined by Kate Otis and Chuck Otis. Kate has started. We have been really pumped here on Eagle Insider, the site I work for, to start having coverage of women's basketball up on the site. I have been building up a staff on my site and to cover some of the sports that I haven't had the chance myself to get into. And I love women's sports. Personal story myself, my wife's cousin was a all Big East player of the year for not Big Player of the Year, all Big East team a couple years ago for Villanova. So I love women's basketball. I don't have time to cover it myself. So I was so pumped when Kate came on. Kate, talk a little bit about what's gone on so far with the women's basketball team.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. So unfortunately, similar to our, football team we talked about earlier, they're not off to the greatest start. They're currently 3-5 after this loss tonight, just about an hour ago, closing out. They're 3-5 in the ACC. They're at the bottom of the tank on the ACC ranking. So it's interesting because I've watched them too since growing up. I mean, going back to my parents were alumni of BC, so I didn't have a choice to be a BC fan. It was just in my breed. But I grew up watching them too, and I look back at their records and it's crazy. They're just back and forth every year. 1 year they're 11-3, the next year they're 2-10. I might have the numbers wrong there, but they're just on and off. And the head coach, Joanna, she's been around since 2018. So I don't know what needs to change. I mean, they're still in the beginning of the season. They're just getting started, but their defense is solid, just like our football team, BC. And I think they just need some help on offense and converting. We only have 2 seniors on the team, which is good news. So I think they have a lot of talent left, and they got a lot of young ones out there to help them, bring it home. So it's a rough start, but it's just the beginning for them.
So I think one of the biggest stories, and this was before you came aboard, is it's been a tough couple years, especially for the folks that follow the team pretty closely, because there's been like a mass exodus of players. You look at some of the stars that were on this team, and I mean, Maria Gagdeng, just one off the top of my head. It was like, I think she was all freshman or, all ACC last year, one of the best defensive players on BC. She leaves. She's at UNC now. You lose, I forget her name, but she's at Duke now. And so Joanna McNamee has really struggled to keep some of her players aboard. And I honestly don't know if that's an NIL thing where, they're getting money to go to another school or what it is, but it seems like every year right now, the women's basketball team has to basically start fresh because all the players that were got them to where they were are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about I know there's been a few players that really stood out so far. Can you tell me a little bit about some of those guys, some of the girls that have been going?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Honestly, the youngins are killing it. I might butcher their names. I apologize, but Tiana Todd, sophomore guard. She's 6 foot. She's amazing. She's from Canada. She has been a standout, and you guys, whoever has been following, I like to just call out 2 top place standout players within the report. So she's been one of them time and time again. We also have Andrea Daly, who's a junior guard, 6 feet as well, from Florida. She's been a standout too, defense and offense. Like I mentioned, there's been a lot of good defensive players, as well as Kayla Ivey too. On one of the last games, she had about some type of record on steals. So again, the defense is great. We just need some help on offense and all around for the players. But
right, and as you mentioned, they lost a tough one tonight in the ACC against Kentucky, who I believe was missing 2 of their starters, and they lost by 2 points on the road. So that was a tough loss.
Tough.
Yeah. But again, as someone who follows recruiting, I follow recruiting for any sport, and Joanna McNamee has been doing really well. And I know she's got a really good class coming in for next year. So, even with the struggles, it's still coming on strong. So, Kate, what are your expectations for the season? Do you think they'll be able to turn it around, or do you think it's going to be kind of a learning year for them?
Yeah, honestly, just by looking at their games, I think it's unfortunately going to be a learning year. I mean, you listen to her the head coach's press conferences, and she has a lot of hope and positive, feelings for the team, which is great. She's a very strong leader and, tries to uplift them. But I think it might just have to be a learning curve. Like we said, I mean, they lost some good players out of the portal. So I think this is how it's going to have to go. And then, next year they'll be up on it.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to go through tough times to get to the other side, so.
We know about the Patriots.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So you got Chuck, you still there?
I am.
All right. So Chuck, I would love to get your thoughts. Is there anything specifically Boston College related you wanted to bring up while you're here on Lockdown?
Oh, he could probably go on and on. Here we go.
Yeah. Remember, this episode has to be 30 minutes, and I still got to talk about the basketball team on the final.
Keep it quick.
No. Well, I mean, I've been a fan for many years, and we look back at the Doug Flutie days, and we wish we could get back there. Right. But I think as a BC Eagle football fan and a basketball fan, we just have to set expectations, because it's just, since we've gone to the ACC in those two sports, it's just made it really tough to recruit against. Clemson in football, Florida State in football, Duke in North Carolina, and Syracuse in basketball. And it's a lot tougher than being in the Big East and heading down to Madison Square Garden and getting a shot with Scooney Penn to win the Big East title,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I was, as I've said before, I was at BC when they were the last year, the Big East. So I got to see the tail end of what they had there. I remember seeing some of the games against like Georgetown and Providence and things like that. Those were fun years. It's tough, right? Like, and especially since the landscape has changed so much with NIL and things like that. It's made things even harder for BC, which makes things like Friends of the Heights. If you folks haven't started, the folks out there listening haven't started to donate to them. If you're out there on Twitter or message boards complaining, you got to start donating to the NIL groups, because those, like, you can donate to the Flynn Fund, and all the power to you if you do. But sometimes that the NIL is what's keeping guys like Quentin Post here, Zay Flowers.
Right. You're right. Yeah.
Yes. So like they're so critical, and they need, like, we've had the executive director on, like, they're so critical in terms of where this program can go and what they can do. Kate, did you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, no, the NIL thing you mentioned, it's a great point. I mean, since I'm still, young, and I'm now noticing all the social media and the NIL and all this good jazz. I mean, I didn't even think about it when you guys were watching sports. There obviously was none of that,
Right.
And now it comes down to money, unfortunately. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, there's pros and cons to it, right? I mean, we're excited that these college stars can get paid because they deserve it, but it's just different. It's a different playing field. And like we said, I mean, these big ACC colleges have the bucket to pay out, right? And the smaller schools might not. And it's just
don't let Dabo Sweeney of Clemson hear you say that, though.
I was thinking
believe in NIL.
He doesn't believe in
it. Sure.
But you're right. Like Florida State, I mean, and Louisville, like schools like that right now, and even UNC, they just bought themselves a quarterback for next year.
Yeah, it's crazy. At the end of the day, I think it's like, I mean, again, kids my age who are in these programs, which is still crazy. I mean, I go to football games and I'm like, oh my God, these kids are younger than me, which is nuts. But I'm only like 2 years out of college, but still. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they should still, give themselves credit. Like, listen, I'm still working whether I'm getting paid or not. I would rather not be bought to be on a team. You know what I mean? I mean, and obviously they feel different. I mean, they're the ones trying to get to the NFL. And
well, I think you bring up a point of kind of where BC comes from this, right?
Right. That's what it comes down to. I mean, they're huge on their pride and their faith. So same with Clemson, same with Debo Samuel. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, like, so the way that BC views NIL, right, is that they're not going to pay kids to come here. Other schools you're going to see guys like Arch Manning at Texas. He's going to get millions of dollars just to show up on campus, right?
Right.
BC's not that. They're going to use NIL to keep guys here, like we mentioned, right? Like Zay and Quentin Post, and there's other guys that get it. Hockey's a whole other story. I heard that's a completely different thing, but that's a whole other story for something else. But I look at football and I look at basketball and women's basketball, because I think that's important too, that BC is using that money that they're getting to retain. Like, their goal is to continue what they're doing, which is to bring in these guys, to develop them, and use that money to continue to be able to develop them, and to provide winning teams. And like, I think Quentin Post is the perfect example right now. Like, watch what he's been doing. And the fact, I mean, minus that last week where they were terrible last week, they have been a good basketball team up until then. And they're going to be exciting. I think they're going to be exciting when they start ACC play. So yeah, anyways, that's the end of my diatribe. Sorry.
No, I love it.
So Kate, you're new on Eagle Insider. You've been writing for us for about a month, or maybe a little less than a month. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. My Twitter is Kate Otis. My Instagram is Kate Otis with another extra S. And you can find me there to follow up for more.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so great to have Kate aboard. And Chuck, where can people find you on social media?
I'm just at ChuckFit22.
All right. Thank you, Kate and Chuck, for coming aboard. And
thank you, AJ.
We'll be talking again soon. And Kate, we'd love to have you on again to talk more sports in the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
in a moment, I'm going to get into men's basketball, because they had a huge game on Wednesday against Vanderbilt, and it was a big win. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black. And let's get into some good news here. And I was so glad to have Kate and Chuck on. Very new to the business, but that's what we're here for. We're here to build and learn and to get involved. And I loved having Kate and her voice here on Locked On BC. So we're going to talk about the men's basketball team, because they had, I think, the biggest, most convincing win on Wednesday against Vanderbilt in Earl Grant's career. Most convincing, best half of basketball, at least that first half. They won 82-62. They won by 20 points against a Vandy team that won 22 games last year. They had a guy that had averaged 18.8 points per game. Quentin Post, again, this guy is going to be he's putting in the work to become ACC Player of the Year. You had 25, I think he had 22 points. You had CJ Harris again with another big game, 24 points for him. They just took care of this team. This game was never close. It was wire to wire, Boston College up and down the floor. They played good defense. Vanderbilt looked lost at times because BC was just stifling them. They went on a 12 to they hit what was it, 12 of their first 15 shots, I think it was. They were on fire from the floor. You had guys chipping in. Jaden Zachary had 8 assists. It was the best. And the only reason I could say this, and I know I'm not the person that made up this joke, is because Earl Grant's finally out of his boot. He doesn't have his boot on his foot anymore. He's able to move around. I think that's the reason why. No, I'm kidding. But whatever the reason was, this was great. This is exactly the medicine that they needed after losing 2 straight in that Hall of Fame Classic and losing a terrible game against Loyola Chicago. They needed to go out there and show, hey, we are a good team. And they did that. I mean, you played an SEC school that has a good pedigree on the road, and you beat them by 20 points. You led by 20 points at halftime, and you let the lead slip to 11. That's as close as they got. Other than that, it was all Boston College. Harris hit that big 3 as they started to look like they might come back, and that was it. That was it. Big win. BC's now number 96 in the KenPom rating, the highest I've seen them in a while. They got a huge game on Saturday at home against NC State. They got DJ Byrne is back. That's gonna be the matchup to watch. Quentin Post did whatever he wanted against Vandy because they had no big. and they were struggling in pressure. DJ Byrne beat up BC bad last year. Can Post do enough to get that big dude out of his game? Ken Palm has BC as the favorite in this game. It would be huge if BC can start the ACC schedule off 1-0 with a win against NC State, because you win that game, you're now 7-2 or 6-2. Sorry, you're 6-2. Then you have games against Central Connecticut and Holy Cross. I've watched enough BC sports to never assume any game is an automatic win. We saw them lose to Chicago, who isn't very good. But you have to imagine they'll win those two games. They're at home, I think. I think the Holy Cross game's at home. That could get you up to 8-2 before you really get into the ACC schedule, before you get into St. John. I know you get St. John's coming up too. That feels good. Beating Vanderbilt was the type of win you needed to kind of erase a bad loss. And that's exactly what BC did. Big win for the Eagles. We'll be back on Monday to talk about the game against NC State. We'll talk more about the transfer portal, any news that breaks there. There's so much going on. And we'll know what bowl game BC is going to. Is it going to be Fenway? Is it going to be Pinstripe? Is it going to be one of those Gasparilla Bowls or the Toilet Bowl? Who knows where they're going to end up? We'll find out, and we'll talk about it on Monday. This is AJ Black. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Become an Eagle Insider member right now, because I have transfer portal news up the yin-yang that you're not going to want to miss. Thank you all so much for listening today. Make sure to follow Kate as well. We'll be back again on Monday, and we'll see you again soon. This is Locked On BC, your team every day.
You are